Hello, fellow environmental economics students. I'm Josh Jones. Thanks for watching my clip. The environmental issue I chose to talk about was transforming our nation's energy system from a reliance on fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. More specifically, wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, biomass, tidal. Uh, Nuclear is actually considered a renewable energy source as well. But I'll just use examples from wind for time's sake. So why has this issue even come about? It's because of external costs that people have suffered. External costs being environmental costs in this case. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010, which was the largest in U.S. history. The Eden, North Carolina coal ash dump into the Dan River that dumped 39,000 tons of coal ash into the river last year in February. These are all external costs that affected everybody in a really bad way. And their personal well-being, their health, those are costs associated with them as well. These external costs that I talked about actually affected open access resources. With the Gulf Water Horizon oil spill, it was the ocean fishing in the Gulf and the fish markets and people's well-beings and livelihoods that were affected. In other cases around the world, or around the U.S., but around the world as well, open access resources like the air we need to breathe, the water we need to drink, land we need to grow food and survive. Those are open access resources that the text talks about that have been affected. I think the main aspect of market equilibrium that is driving this change, though, is the market demand and supply. Because of all the external costs, and open access resources that have been affected by the fossil fuel industry, market demand for clean energy has skyrocketed. To give you a little bit of a idea of how much energy the U.S. actually consumes, U.S. Energy Information Administration conducts surveys every year, and the one in 2010 did energy consumption for the entire world and all the different countries. The U.S. consumed 20% of the total global energy consumption. That's a very significant amount because 5% of the Earth's population actually lives on U.S. soil. That's per U.S. Census Bureau. So 5% of the world's population, but we're consuming 20% of total energy consumption. That's a very large amount. So the demand is there. The supply for clean renewable energy wasn't necessarily there up until the 70s energy crisis, when people started rallying for cleaner energy sources. Some more stats to back up supply. The U.S. wind electricity megawatt production raised sixfold in the year 2006 alone and has continued to increase every year. And that's because of the low operating and maintaining costs that have enticed investors and really spurred market growth. There's also tons of technological advancements in renewable energy fields because it's fairly new, and that has caused prices to drop dramatically for that clean energy, which has then increased demand for that clean renewable energy. And since 1980, prices of wind energy have actually dropped over 80%. All my citations will actually be on the bottom of this link if you're interested in checking them out. So what adjustments would I contemplate? What policies would I implement if I was in charge of everything? I think government-sponsored incentive-based policies that the text talks about in Chapter 7 would be very beneficial. Both taxes and subsidies, a happy dose of both, would really benefit this sort of policy making. So taxes, some examples: taxes on corporations and energy companies. Some that are already being used are carbon emission taxes, where companies basically have a carbon emission ceiling. If they go over that, it's going to cost them, they're taxed very heavily on that. It's basically like a fine. So it encourages them to revamp their program and reduce fossil fuel emissions, carbon emissions. Other taxes that I would encourage and implement: tax breaks for people with energy efficient appliances, everything from energy efficient windows. These are examples of ones already in use. People who install energy efficient windows, solar panels, drive electric cars, they get a big tax refund every year for using that. Those are things that can really entice investors and entice people to use this type of energy. Subsidies as well. I would encourage government-sponsored installment programs that allow people to get their hands on this energy that will change the direction. And what I thought was really important with installment programs or incentive programs, it encourages people to make decisions simultaneously beneficial for the individual best interest, but then also society's best interest. And that's what I like about incentive-based policy programs, that they can do that very easily without taxing people and basically telling them, you're going to do this, this, this. They can make the decisions for themselves. What's important with all this, it needs to be enforceable on a national level if possible. I think it is definitely enforceable, and it's going to be cost effective. It's not going to be outrageously expensive to do so here in America. These should be flexible as well, that the text talks about. That's important, to be flexible, to change with the times and the circumstances, but it shouldn't be so flexible that consumers can actually end up being taken advantage of. Legislation should not be able to be passed that's going to be counterproductive to what the end goal really is, which is bound to happen to some degree. There's going to be pushback, but I just think it shouldn't be able to be steamrolled. I'm against policy centralization. I think it should be handled at the lowest possible level. The state level, in this case, would probably be more likely than local or county. But that allows people to make decisions for themselves and not have Uncle Sam telling them what to do. It should be addressed at the lowest level. That's definitely important. I think that less government policy is required for things like this, as far as how people are going to do it. But with the incentive-based programs, it can encourage people to have a choice and still move the market equilibrium in a way we want. It's not going to be equitable or fair to everybody, but neither is life. And having more competition in the market is going to drive down prices, more competitions for different energy sources. And like the text talks about with the Rocky Mountain Economical Renewal Program, a penny saved is a penny earned, and that is directed directly back into the local economy. Amory Lovey's talks about it, that 20% of income, a community's income or an individual's income either, is actually spent on energy. And 80% of that money that goes to pay for energy is actually leaving the local community. So in that case, that's a huge hole in the bucket. And if we were able to implement policies that are going to encourage sustainability and renewable energy sources, that's going to be a huge plug in that bucket analogy. So that's pretty much all I have. I'm sorry I ran a little bit late. Thanks for watching. But that's my stance on my environmental issue and the aspects of market equilibrium that affected it, that would affect it, and how I would contemplate making adjustments with policies. So thanks for watching. Talk to you later.